Hey everybody, Fragger here with Retroactive, here to return with some awesome games in store. In Retroactive, we talk about old games, newer games, and I hope that we'll see either sequels to these games or maybe a remake or any of these other terms that go along with it. This can cover everything from the NES all the way up to the past generation, including PC games. Now, let's dig right into this week's topic, which is Quake. Quake holds a very special place in my gamer heart, because Quake was one of the very first FPSs that I ever played growing up. The first was actually Dark Forces, which I've mentioned previous, but Quake was like right after that. I loved the Quake series. Quake was like a refinement of all the things that was made right in Doom, but let's dig into the actual awesomeness of Quake itself. Quake came out in June of 1996, few 2 years after Doom 2's release, so it's kind of amazing to see something like Doom 2, then 2 years later you had Quake. It's amazing how things escalate in terms of visual fidelity, but Quake was one of those kind of game changers, whereas Doom was originally the game changer saying, hey look, first-person shooters, look how fucking awesome they are. Quake was like, this is multiplayer. This is what can happen when multiplayer is done really, really well. And because of Quake is where we get a lot of our bigger FPS tropes when it comes to multiplayer. This is where Team Fortress came from. This is really where Capture the Flag came from. If it wasn't for Quake, you probably wouldn't be doing that. Also, the really awesome Jailbreak. Jailbreak was a lot of fun. We need more Jailbreak game types. But that's really not what we're here to talk about, is the multiplayer. I mean, we've had standalone Quake titles that are multiplayer, and they're on the 360 even, with, Quake 3. It's pretty awesome. But when it really boils down to it, Quake is just almost like a lost gem at this point. With everything coming out these days, I mean, we have Doom 3 BFG to help promote the upcoming Doom 4, whenever the fuck that comes out. We need to see more awesome things like Quake happen. Quake was one of those fairly original titles when it came out. Well, I'm using original in air quotes here, but you can't convey that with sound of course. Quake is a really important game when it comes to history. I mean, some of the later games may not be up to snuff. I mean, hell, I love Quake 2, and I know it's not as good as Quake 1. But when it really comes down to things, Quake is kind of one of those games that everybody needs to play. I mean, it's got very tight levels, it plays very well, and it still really holds up. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that you kind of need to play these kind of games. It helps you learn where you came from as a genre. We wouldn't have FPSs as they are today if it wasn't for games like Doom and Quake. Well, the way Doom is these days, if you have a device, you can probably play Doom officially on it. Doom's fucking everywhere. Quake is kind of the odd man out on this. I mean, it is a series, doesn't get that much attention, and it's kind of weird in that way, because I've always liked it more. I mean, granted, it's got a lot of the same guns, but you start with a shotgun, and you get a nail gun, and the nails have NIN on them, and 9 Inch Nails to the soundtrack, or specifically Trent Reznor did. That's always confusing to me. But this game in a nutshell is awesome. I mean, granted, it's pretty much Doom, but in full 3D, but it's got a lot of tighter stuff attached to it. It's almost like, hey, this is what we did in Doom. We made it a little bit better in Doom 2. We made it awesome in Quake. But in the end, Quake is a fantastic game, and everybody really should sit down and play this game at least once. And what have I see done with this? I would actually love to see a revival of the series. We're probably going to see a Quake 5 at some point. I mean, it's id. They make Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, Rage. And we'll definitely see another Quake at some point. But when is entirely up to them. And if Doom 4 is stupidly popular, it may be a while before we see Quake, but I would love to see Quake sooner. I mean, the only real ways that we can play Quake is that you got Quake 3 on the arcade, you got Quake 4 on the 360, which has some really terrible achievements, and you got Quake 2 with achievements with no gamer score, awesome, but no Quake. Come on, guys. Give us Quake. We all want Quake. Well, guys, that'll do it for me this week. See you guys next time.